A year into going self-employed, Jack was working hard but hitting a ceiling. Same marketing, fewer results. In this episode, we unpack exactly what was holding him back and the strategy shifts that can help him win more instructions and sell faster starting from now. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Jack, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. So talk me through your journey in estate agency. How have we got to today?
Yes. So I started my career in London, which is where I sort of went straight after university. And the first company I worked for was Douglas and Gordon in lettings. So started my career there, and I kind of thought when I started that it was just going to be something for a couple of years, working out, finding my feet, and then moving into a different industry or a different part of the property world. But got sucked in and loved the job and have been doing it ever since. And so I had a few years at Douglas and Gordon, and then I moved across to Savills around West London, working in a few offices with them before deciding to then take the leap of faith and moved out to Bath to a completely new market, completely new location, knew no one in the property world around here, and set up through EXP and have been doing that for just about a year now.
Cool.
So that sort of takes you forwards to today.
Good. So talk me through how it's been going. So talk me through, so you launched a year ago. So what was what's the first 6 months? What's the second 6 months? How's it been going on that side?
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster and a real eye opener because of the brands that I was working at before, which were very big and well known brands. In terms of generating business, it wasn't something which we really had to focus on. We did a little bit of lead generation and working on marketing, but not much of it at all. So the hard part for me at the start, setting up, was working out how do I actually find clients, how do I find landlords, and how do I find vendors, and how do I get them to choose me over the competition. And that's been the real learning curve. So the first 6 months, really, there wasn't much in the way of instructions. I think I probably had one property which came on the market and sold.
Okay.
So just at least something came in. And then it's really been that second 6 months where that snowball effect of all of the different marketing tactics I've generated has started to then bring in the instructions, bring in the market appraisals, and bring through sales and completions.
Cool. So talk me through. So sort of, you mentioned one instruction in the first 6 months, which is tough going. So second 6 months, what's an average month look for you at the moment with regard to market appraisals and instructions, etc.?
Yeah, so really in the last couple of months, it's been about two a week, my market appraisals. So yeah, over the last 6 months, it's been 32 MAs that I've had in. But really that's building up to, it was maybe one every couple of weeks in that first few months of the last 6 months, and then more recently 2 to 3 a week, which has been a good sort of steady growth. So that's probably a typical week in terms of market appraisals, a couple a week. And then usually I've got between 4 and 6 properties on the market for sales, maybe one for lettings, and then between sort of 3 and 5 in the pipeline, which have been sale agreed. So dealing with the pipeline, the on-market stock, and the market appraisals, that takes up sort of a big chunk of the week. And then the rest is trying to bring in new business.
Okay. And so if you're going to do 2 market appraisals per week, so let's say you're getting 8 per month, I know it's slightly more technically, but let's say you're going to 8 market appraisals per month, how many of those would you expect to get on the market in a month?
Well, I've sort of had, of the 32 which I had in the last 6 months, 16 have turned into instructions, which have been actually taken onto the market. A few more of those should come on in the coming weeks, so probably take that up to about 20 of those 32 MAs.
Okay.
So I'm not very good with my percentages, but that feels something like 60 to 65%, which would turn into an actual instruction. So 1.5 probably of those 2 MAs you'd expect to then materialize into an instruction.
Cool. Okay. And how many of those have you sold or are selling currently?
Yes, so there's 8 which have been sold, 2 of which have completed, and 6 which are in the pipeline right now.
Okay, cool. Well, I've got some good news already. Your conversions are good. So, obviously market appraisal numbers we'll come on to very shortly. But for your 32 market appraisals to get sort of 16 at the moment, that's bang on 50%. That's a nice easy bit of maths. So obviously
Yep.
anything on top of that is kind of is gravy on top of that. And to sell 8 out of your last 16, that's bang on 50% again. So, nice easy maths for me to work that out. So that side of things, pretty good in the grand scheme of things. And how many of those properties you've had in your pipeline have gone through to completion so far? What's your fall through rate, sort of conversion from sale agreed to completion?
So actually been very fortunate with these ones which have gone sale agreed and completed, in that everything that's gone through has
Ooh,
either it's still in the pipeline, hasn't completed yet, or has
yep,
completed.
good.
There was one fall through, but that was in the last 6 months, not this 6 months, the prior 6 months. So very soon after starting. But in terms of my pipeline management, I think when you become self-employed and you realize how much each one of those fees matters,
Mhm.
you're very on top of it to make sure that the deal is progressing, and that when things might fall out of bed, you do all that you can to prevent it.
Okay. And so how many, you did mention earlier, kind of a rough idea, how many properties have you got for sale versus under offer at the moment?
So on the market right now, there's eight, and
Yep.
in the pipeline, there's four.
Okay. Cool. Okay. My spider sense is tingling on a few things here already, so that's good. Right. Okay. So talk me through marketing then, because obviously market appraisals leads from marketing. You can't spell market appraisal without marketing. So what have you been doing? What are the people in your areas been receiving from yourself?
Yeah, so probably the biggest success for me has been prospecting letters.
Okay.
So through the software system that I use, Loop, we have a prospecting tool on there,
Hmm.
which generates you the addresses of properties which have been on the market and haven't sold.
Okay.
So trying to send out at least 15 to 20 letters a week on that front, if not a little bit more if the time's there,
Okay.
just keeping consistent with that. That has generated quite a few instructions. So that's worked really well, sending those letters to on market stock. Have been doing as much as I can on social media, which has generated one instruction, which I'm happy with. But
Good.
hopefully, we'll continue to do that. So that is some paid advertising through Instagram and Facebook, and then also just organic growth on those pages.
Cool.
And then also have tried a few different local publications. So I'm based in Bath. Bath Life's a really big magazine here.
Mhm.
So putting adverts in that magazine, and then also some of the local papers in the villages and towns around Bath, putting adverts into there has generated a couple of things, a couple of instructions. But the vast majority of those initial instructions have come through those prospecting letters.
Cool. So how many of those, so how many instructions of your 16 instructions do you think have come via the letters?
I'd say definitely between 50 and 60%. A
Okay.
good number of those were properties which were on with other agents, hadn't sold, and then I've reached out to them and they've switched. And then the rest are made up of those other bits of marketing that we were talking about, plus now a couple of recommendations. Now that I've been here for long enough to have people refer me via word of mouth. And then also a couple of those instructions have been friends and family, which when you're starting out is always helpful to get some properties on the market through those
Absolutely.
connections you already have.
Absolutely. Take those wins. So a little bit of a curveball here, which will make all make sense later on. Of the properties you've got under offer at the moment, so the four you've got under offer, how many of those were sort of a second-hand property, so to speak? How many of those were not sort of new instructions on the market? Obviously, they'd been with another agent before.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm just actually going to have a look at the sales progression now to see what that is. So, of those which are under offer, there's one which was an other agent stock, and three which were instructions which came straight to me first.
Cool. Spider sense is more than going off right now. Right. Okay. Cool. So we've got a good range of marketing going out, and I had a good stalk of your social media before we started, and I think it's really cool. I think there's always improvements to make. I mean, literally, my job is
Of
nitpicking
course.
people's businesses. There's always improvements to make, but I would say you're in the probably top 10% of agents with regard to kind of the content you're putting out there. There's lots of you in front of the camera, lots of pictures of you. There's lots of people I recognize. I recognize Mel Lewis. I recognize Toby Martin. I was like, oh, there you go. So, there's lots of really good stuff on there. I enjoyed your market update videos as well. I thought they were pretty cool. But also, one of your market update videos that I watched led me a little bit to, I think, is the problem you're having at the moment. So, I'm going to have a bit of a guess here. Do you probably feel at the moment like you are chasing a lot of people, like you are a little bit like you've got chicken pox or something, and you're like chasing, 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 and it's not as many people as you would like coming back to you?
Yeah, exactly that. I think a lot of what I'm doing is keeping in touch with those people I prospected to, that they've got the property on the market with another agent and they're umming and ahhing about switching, and you're sort of regularly checking in with them to see how the marketing is getting on with the other agent and see if they're interested in me coming out to give them a market appraisal. So yeah, it's a lot of reaching out and keeping in touch with people and reminding them that I'm here, and not as much as I would like as people coming to me directly. That's
Okay.
something which I would really like to try and change.
Cool. We've got two big things that we're going to take away from today, which are going to change your business quite quickly, which are really good. One is quite a quick short-term play. One's a slightly longer-term play, but isn't like you're not turning the Titanic here. So like it's not the end of the world. So first things first is I would hope slash expect you'd have more properties under offer. So you've got 8 and 4 at the moment. And the reason I asked what properties are kind of secondhand or new are in the sort of under offer pile at the moment is because we're looking at the pricing of those properties primarily. So talk me through the process. If I came on the market with you today and I've got a house in Bath, for example, and I get no viewings, no activity, no nothing, what do I get from you? Talk me through sort of the next sort of month or so sort of activity that I would get from you if I came on the market.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. So I always try and get the pricing right at the start. That's the most crucial thing. So that's where you're really leaning in on your comparables and the evidence to back up that valuation to instruct it at the right price. So everything that I've had really has sold pretty quickly, other than in the last month or so,
Mhm.
where these instructions have come on and they have stuck around for a little bit longer. If there's nothing in, well, there'll always be a weekly update, and I'll always keep in
Good.
touch with viewings and feedbacks and let the vendors know how things are progressing.
Mhm.
I do a weekly newsletter which shows what's happening in the market. So that's shared with all vendors as well. So they've got an idea of
Good.
where the market's at, the number of transactions that are happening in the local market. So they can see if it is a busy market and I'm not selling it, or if it is a quieter market, and therefore that's the reason why there's not the activity levels they would hope for. And I always put in my market appraisals, and I'm open with vendors at the start to say if there isn't that activity in the first 4 to 6 weeks, and we're not getting people through the door at the price we list it at, we do need to discuss a price reduction. Because with what I like to do with the quality of the marketing that we get, which is really high quality, we get home stages in to make sure that the property's looking smart before the photography's done. So if we've nailed the marketing and we're really working hard on pushing that property out to buyers and it's not selling, the one unchanged thing is the price. So then it comes down to a price reduction.
Okay. So effectively, I would get a weekly, I guess, phone call from yourself is your update.
Yeah.
Cool. Good.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So get it priced to start off with. I get a weekly phone call from yourself. Also get the newsletter, which kind of backs up sort of what's going on in the local marketplace as well.
Yeah.
And then week 4 to 6, you'll kind of chat to me about the price.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. You need to bring that forward. So
Okay.
you need to, I would say that the right time to change the price of property is around week 3, week 4. So, and if you had to pick one of those, it'd be week 3. So we're kind of waiting twice as long, basically, than we need to before we change the price. So the longer you leave the price to change after about week number 3, the higher your fall through rate, the higher your withdrawn rate, the higher it goes to another agent, like all the stuff you don't want, basically, adds up very quickly. So effectively, a really nice, easy job to do is when you first list the property on the market, put a reminder in your diary for 3 weeks' time, right, one new road came on the market 3 weeks ago. This is like price reduction week. And if you're doing your job correctly on your vendor care, effectively, you're getting across how hard you're working week in, week out. So you're saying, look, week 1, we've done this, it's online, I've got my socials, I'm sending it out. Week 2 is saying, look, we're still doing this, we're still working. I would have expected though, 3, 4, 5 viewings off the back of this sort of thing. Everyone else is getting those. And then week 3 is like, Merry Christmas, we need to change the price. So
Yeah.
that's almost the sort of circuit you're doing at the moment. You just need to kind of bring it in and probably half the length of time to do it. So basically, your business becomes a conveyor belt, and it's on a day one. By the time you get to kind of day 21 sort of thing, we're looking at the pricing and changing that at your property because yeah, you're leaving that too long. So really, if we can just level that up, because what have we got in total? We should really have six properties for sale, six properties under offer at the moment. Which what's your average fee currently, ish in cash?
Probably about 5.5 to 6 grand.
Okay, so that's worth 10 grand in your pipeline. So
Yeah.
worth having. So that's worth what, 30 grand a year. So yeah, nice couple of holidays. So just on that one quick change, that's what you need to do with it. And I think that you've probably, and from your point of a business, obviously, I know when you first start, everyone's a little bit sort of softer with the price reduction sort of thing. It's almost like I want to drop the price down, but please, for the love of God, don't leave my business because I've only got 10 instructions sort of thing and I can't go down to nine.
Yeah.
You're now sort of through that sort of part, I would say, and you're kind of maturing as a business and sort of getting a bit more confidence about what you're kind of worth. So therefore, you can kind of push your weight around slightly more. So you probably need a slightly more bullish conversation earlier on with your vendors about the pricing side. And especially if they've been on the market with another agent already for the last 6 months, 2 months, whatever it may be, a pricing conversation needs to come out quite quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just having a look actually at those ones which have been on the market and how long they've been on the market for. And it is often those ones which have been another agent hasn't sold them, they switch to me, which are sticking that little bit longer.
Yep. Cool. So that is that's our short-term fix. So that's a nice easy win if you spend an hour or two on the phone off the back of this, and you'll be up to speed sort of thing quite quickly. You get a few more sales
Yeah.
coming in, then high fives around. Good news. So let's go into the slightly longer term. So I'll tell you the two things that sort of set off the bat signal for me for this one. Number
Yeah.
one is your market update. And you said, I can't remember the exact figure, but I think you said there's 1,333 properties for sale or 1,033. And I thought, that's a lot of properties to start off with. So that was kind of red flashy light number one. And then I looked at your Instagram account and there's some parts of this I love. So I love all the bits that have you in it and your face and your video. I think it's absolutely awesome. But if I just read the first sentence on your bio, independent estate agent in Bath, sales, lettings and property management across Somerset and Wiltshire. So I don't think people in Somerset particularly like people in Wiltshire, and people in Wiltshire probably don't like people in Somerset. So that is a big area, to say the least. Do you know how many households are in Bath, for example?
It's a good question. I mean, the population of Bath is 95,000,
Yep.
so there's going to be at least that many homes probably across Bath. It's a big place.
Yep. So you're looking at a household count in Bath of 40,000 people, 40,000 households in Bath. So
Mm.
quite a lot. So you've got listings in Bath and you've also got listings in Frome as well. So I know Frome quite well because my sister lives there. So how many households do you reckon are in Frome?
Brilliant, that's a good question. If I was to guess, working off the same sort of half the number of houses as people, probably something like 10,000 in
Oh, you're not far
Frome,
off.
something around that.
This is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I would have given it to you on that. It's about 13,000. So you're not a million miles off. So
13,000.
generally speaking, I can't remember the exact figures, but I think it's about 2.3 or 2.4 people who live in every kind of household sort of thing. So kind of the population, you can kind of
Yeah.
work it out that way. So in total, you've got 63,000 people within your core batch just in Bath and Frome alone. Now,
Mm.
that's not taking consideration because obviously Bath's over here, Frome's over here. There's a whole gap of people between those people as well. So that's not including those sort of villages and fields and whatever else is between those two places. That's just looking at
Yeah.
sort of the main population overall. If I said to you the numbers 7, 11, 4, would you know what I was talking about?
No.
Cool. Okay. So this is before people know, like, and trust you. So this is, imagine if you're a movie star, for example, and I watched a few of your films, I'd be like, oh, Jack's an awesome guy, seems really nice, never met you, but you seem really nice on the movies, or you seem really nice on Graham Norton sort of thing. So people can know, like, and trust you by kind of before they've even met you. So this is why people cry when their celebrities die that they never met, sort of thing, and when the Queen died and whatever else. So the 7 is 7 hours worth of content. So if I watched
Hmm.
two Titanics, I would be like, oh, I love that Leonardo DiCaprio. He's such a good actor. 11 is 11 marketing touch points. So that is going to be 11 bits of marketing kind of going through your front door or whatever medium it might be.
Yeah.
That's that part. And finally, you've got number 4, which is the 4 different locations. So four different locations is I might see you on socials. I might get a leaflet from yourself, for example. Different sort of mediums. So like, oh, I see you. I see your board. I saw your branded car. I saw your leaflet. I saw your letters. All these sort of things, they add up over time. And effectively, if you tick all those boxes, I'm like, Jack's the man. He's the property guy. I like him. He's friendly. He's really cool, sort of thing. Might have never met you in any way, shape, or form. So of those, I appreciate that 7 hours of content is quite hard to do. For a man who produces a lot of content, it's quite hard to get 7 hours worth of content, but you're going in the right direction. So we're kind of pushing that forward. So that's a good way to go with it. The main one I want to focus on though is the 11 marketing touch points. So do you know how many bits of marketing you need to get out to get 11 marketing touch points in front of the whole of Bath and the whole of Frome?
Well, if it's 11 times and those
11
populations
times
together is,
63,000. So,
yeah,
well,
exactly.
I'll save you the maths. It's 693,000 marketing touch points. I'm not quite sure what your marketing budget is. I haven't asked you that question, but I'm willing to bet it doesn't stretch to nearly 700,000 marketing touch points within the west of the UK.
Definitely not. If
Cool.
only, that'd be great.
Okay, so we've got three options, and I suggest we go down the route of doing of kind of one of them here. So, option number one is we increase our marketing, which would be, we do a lot more marketing. So, for example, you mentioned letters, you're doing 15, 20 per week. We could increase that. We can increase everything and keep the area the same size. But in reality, you're going to have to do so much marketing and spend so much money onto it. You are literally going to be throwing cash at it. Remember when Purple Brick sponsored the Olympics in 2012? It would be like that, basically. So you're going to spend a lot of money. That's option number one. That's without shrinking the area and just increase the marketing. Option number two is we keep the marketing level the same, but we shrink your area down. So you mentioned you live in Bath currently. So I'm going to
Yeah.
lean into Bath more than anything else. Also, I have clients who work in Bath, and I've got clients who work in Frome as well. I know Bath has really nice properties, affluent place, nice prices. I look at some of the prices of flats and wince slightly when I see them go through. So it's a good place to be working. What particular parts of Bath would you say are your strongest suit area, your kind of demographic? You're like, okay, the north of Bath, I love them, they love me, it's the right sort of property, etc.
Yeah, I think really it's been flats in the city centre has been a big bulk of what my stock is. 1, 2, 3 bed flats, probably between 400 and 750 has been a big bulk of the stock. There's been quite a lot around where my office is, which is in the Bathwick area of Bath, so over the other side of Pulteney Bridge. Which is just a small part of Bath. There's been a few instructions which have come up in the same place there.
Okay.
So probably flats, city centre, and Bathwick as an area.
Talk to me more about Bathwick, because knowing Bath like I do, every agent under their sun is in Bath city centre, and it's quite a competitive field to say the least. Talk to me about Bathwick. How many households are in it? How many agents are in it?
Well, yeah, there's actually it's very small Bath city centre in terms of where people cover, but in terms of agents actually in Bathwick, there's really only Winkworth, which are right here in this part of the town, and they do have a good presence here. A couple of the other guys have quite a lot here. Whitley Helly is an agent which gets lots on around the Bathwick area.
Yep.
It's basically a small area, the other side of Pulteney Bridge, so just out from the city centre where the Rec is, where Bath Rugby Stadium is.
Yep.
You've got a few really nice residential streets, and you've got Bathwick Hill, which is a really exclusive hill, which has these amazing mega houses on. I don't know how many houses there are in Bathwick actually, but it's not a huge area. You can walk across it in 15 minutes.
Cool. So where we want to get to, so historically, I've always said that sort of 5,000 households is about the right sort of area for a one-person band. If anything, as I get older and wiser and slightly more wrinklier, I would reduce that down, and I'd maybe look at 4,000, 3,000, that sort of ballpark, which is probably going to be, a big village, a certain part of town, something along those sort of lines. So therefore, that's option two, is to sort of shrink our area down and keep the marketing the same. Option number three, which is kind of like the Goldilocks, I would say in this situation, is to shrink the area down and increase the marketing as well. So it's to get to go, right, okay, so if anybody who lives, let's say Bathwick, let's pick that nice round, a nice easy example here. Anybody who lives in that area is like, Jack's the man. He sells every property around here. He is literally like the unstoppable force with properties in this area. You're at least going to be one of the three going out to valuations in that area. Because really, looking at your figures, your conversion from market appraisal to instruction is good. Your conversion from instruction to sale is pretty good, sort of thing. Your completion rate's really good. So actually, you actually haven't got an estate agent problem. You're a good estate agent. You do the job, list them, sell them, high five, shack sort of thing. But what you have got is an estate agency problem, which probably kind of
Mm.
boils back to working for some of the big brands where the phone just rings and hello is at Savills and whatever else it might be.
Yeah.
So really what we're looking to do here is to shrink down your core area in quite a big way. I mean, we're dropping it
Mm.
down from 63,000 to probably 60,000. So we're
Yeah.
dropping
Yeah.
some weight there quite heavily. If you even just kept your marketing the same sort of level and just became the local expert in that patch, you're onto a winner. So
Mm.
effectively, if you think about if we talk in terms of LinkedIn bios, oh, it's not LinkedIn, Instagram bios, your bio would literally be, independent estate agent based in Bathwick, sales, lettings, property management, follow me for all the updates about Bathwick property market. And you're like, and then the sort of lead magnet off the back of it is, find out what your house in Bathwick could be worth in 30 seconds or less, finger down to link button sort of thing. So we're just
Yeah.
really niching down as much as possible because you haven't got the biggest marketing budget in the world because you're a one person band and that's sort of life of going self-employed. So therefore we need to shrink that core area down, but also we can increase our marketing slightly around that area. And every time you listed a property, sold a property, completed a property, had a buyer looking in that area, for example, you're banging out social media content, which is very locally specific. Great. And if your market update is like, right, guys, here's what's happening within a quarter mile radius of where you live, I'd watch that video. Or here's what's going on
Yeah.
in the village this weekend. I'm like, great, I'll listen to that stuff because it's local stuff and people like local stuff. Even going beyond it, I know you've been on a few podcasts from what I can see on your social media. Even you had a local podcast, that local area. God, everyone would listen into that, what's going on in the local area. The whole of Bath, I'd maybe listen to it, maybe not listen. If it's just my sort of individual part of it, absolutely, I'll be listening to that. So, that is where you can add a huge amount of value and a huge amount of traction for your business. Is just going, actually, instead of this massive area with lots of households in, let's just shrink that right the way down to a condensed space and then really focus in a zone as much as possible. You need to be like, Mr. this area. And it's not going to be a big patch. So does that resonate with you? Is that kind of one of the areas you thought in the business might need to change?
Yeah, definitely. I think in that, well, it's just coming up to being the first year. You're desperate just to get stock on,
Yep.
and so you're kind of taking things from everywhere. And I suppose you have the perspective of, well, if I cast a really wide net,
Hmm.
it's going to increase my chances of getting more properties on the market, which will generate more fees for me.
Hmm.
But I have felt that I'm now starting to get, with the volume of instructions I have, spread a bit too thin.
Yep.
I've got a few things on the market in Frome. I've had a few things on in Bristol as well, which
Hmm.
is, it's an hour's round trip to get there and back. And then the rest being Bath City Centre and around Bathwick. And so it has become unmanageable and it's difficult to create that focus. So I think having a smaller area of focus and really dialing down on that is something which has been in the back of my mind and is definitely worth focusing on more.
Yep. And the third and final thing, which you kind of highlighted there quite nicely, is that when you mentioned earlier that you were kind of at the rev limiter or you're really busy sort of thing when you've got your 8 properties for sale and 4 properties under offer. So I would always say that the rev limiter for one person band is around 15 to sell, 15 under offer. So automatically, when you say I've got 8 properties to sell, 4 properties under offer, and I'm exhausted and I'm running over the show sort of thing, straight away there's inefficiencies in the business, and it's either you're doing the wrong thing, which I don't think you are in most situations, or you're covering a massive area and you're spending half your life in your car driving around, which you don't get paid to do. In fact, it costs you money to do, sort of thing, which we don't want to do. So really, you want to be getting it to the point where you can pretty much walk or ride a bike to most of your instructions, sort of thing, because they are that local to yourself and you become that sort of local hub.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely something which needs to be a bigger focus of the business
Okay.
to really nail down on that area.
Okay.
I mean, the question that I would have to you on that front is
Mm.
it makes a lot of sense from how I could improve the social media to be more area specific and focused. That's an easy change which can happen instantly. But in terms of the marketing and actually the local ads and paid ads and things, what would you recommend doing to really nail in on an area? Because there's not like a Bathwick local paper, for example,
Yep.
that doesn't exist. So what would you do?
Okay. I would go to where the people are. And that sounds very over the top. Everyone's head is in their phone these days, pretty much constantly. So, I'm sure the paper's got a wide spread and they say, well, it goes to 10,000 households and whatever else it might be. If I was launching my business today in the estate agency world, I would be like Mr. Social Media all day, every day, live video. Thank you very much. I'm doing a viewing. I'm doing evaluation. Here's some facts. I've just done this. I've
Yeah.
just done that. And what we're basically trying to get is kind of super fans in the area. Your
Yeah.
goal is to get recognized in Waitrose or Sainsbury's, wherever it may be. And they're like, aren't you
Yeah.
that Jack guy? I think I've seen you on social media. You're like, I am that Jack guy. Thank you very much. That's ultimately where you want to get to with it. And for your business, you almost want like a plan A and a plan B. And plan A is within your core patch. And you're like, great, this is a house within my core patch. I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at it. So it's for sale in your areas, it's marketing, it's videos, it's all this sort of stuff. Absolutely everything you can,
Yeah.
can do. If you got a listing drop in your lap, I'll be like, well, you're probably going to take it, especially the sort of where the business is at the moment. I wouldn't say no to it,
Yeah.
but the marketing is very different in that area. You might do, right, I'll bang the board up, I'll do a quick social media video on it, sort of thing. Is there any marketing going out in the local area? Probably not, because you want to be spending 80, 90% of your time within your core patch. So you're kind of going there, doing an open day outside of area, for example, then kind of scuttling back to kind of your core patch. And it's a bit like steering a boat. Although you're kind of turning the wheel quite early on now, it's going to take a little bit of time. But if you keep turning in that direction, eventually it's going to end up in the core patch. Otherwise, what you're going to do if you keep kind of sprinkling yourself everywhere, sort of thing, you'll be sprinkling yourself everywhere for the next 10 years and you'll be exhausted and you'll be like Mr. West of the UK, which no one wants to be. You want to go, actually,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just do like a core amount of marketing. 80, 90% of my marketing goes within this core patch. They are sick of the sight of me, but they know exactly who I am and what I do. And if you mentioned there's only a couple of agents around there who are kind of pulling their weight, great. But if you can get one of three, you've shown already you can blow them out of the water. So that's, most of your problem solved just by that change.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Good,
Really does.
excellent. Well, we'll have you back on the podcast. I actually forgot we were recording this then, completely on the podcast. I'm really in the zone. So we'll have to have you back on the podcast in the future. So let's give it 6 months, 9 months or so. We'll have you back on the podcast. So that'll keep you nice and accountable over the next 6, 9 months or so, because you'll definitely want to double down on that local area. So, Jack, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure, buddy.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.